was kind of like using the, like just kind of, I don't know if you would call it like an analogy or whatever, but like I was saying how, you know, point of story, this is how it's going to be. This is not me getting comfortable or getting warmed up. This is how I have been all day. This is how I'm probably going to be for forever. So I just want to it's not that I just want to get through this. It's not that. It's I want to do what I need to do. I want to feel like I've accomplished what it was that I needed to accomplish. So I was comparing God to like a dad or a parent at a sleepover when you're a kid, and like, you know, saying, if y'all don't get quiet, I'm about to come up there, you know, like I'm about to come upstairs or I'm about to come downstairs, or whatever, you know, like just throwing in like, I'm serious this time, like keep it down, you know. But I was saying, you know, kind of in regards to, you know, God staying true to his word, but I really think that ever since 2020, at the very least, but I mean, I feel like these things have been set into motion for like a long time, if not always. But I think that, you know, I even remember referring to, I don't know, I guess life as a dress rehearsal in 2020, which I find that very interesting now. I'm like, what the stuff that I would say, and it's like, you know, it's why would I say that, you know, as a dress rehearsal? And it was, I think, and I think that when I was a dancer, and we would be getting ready for recital, you know, we would have our last few rehearsals on stage, you know, like at the auditorium where we were going to do the recital. And then of course the dress rehearsal would be usually like that Friday night if the recital was Saturday night. And I remember my dance teacher, I say one time, but probably several times during dress rehearsal, stopping, like, you know, interrupting, you know, I mean, cutting the music and going out there and like correcting people and fixing what needed to be fixed. And I was, of course, I mean, I was surprised by that. But if it's not right, it's not right, you know? And so it's like, you know, I was kind of using that comparison too, just thinking about how God, you know, it's not like he had things planned and was like, oh, maybe you know, he's not the parent that says he's gonna, if you do that one more time, I'm really gonna, and then doesn't go through with it. It's not that at all. It's the fact that he's so true to his word that he's really, really, I believe, just holding out a little while longer. And I think maybe that's part of what has been weighing on me lately is that, you know, like I said, I'm not at all concerned for my salvation. I'm not worried that, you know, if time, I mean, of course not if, but of course time is running out. But assuming that we are on a very, very, you know, short measure of time, you know, remaining time, like in the last quarter, you know, I'm not at all worried that something might happen and there may be a fumble of the ball and maybe, no, like I know where I'm good. My name is in the book of life, and I'm not bragging. I just feel very, very confident about that. But that's not what matters to me. I mean, of course that matters, but that is the very, very fundamental, like, that's only, there's a lot of people that, I don't even think Jesus is referring to these people when he says the people that on that day will say, Lord, Lord, did we not perform all these works and do all these things in your name? And he will say, depart from me, for I never knew you. I don't even think that those are the people I'm worried about. I mean, obviously I am. And obviously I would hope that people would take heed to that. You know, there's so much scripture that's, you know, just, it's warning, but it's in a loving, it's out of love and concern. It's almost like a plea, like, or not a plea, but, you know, kind of like begging you, like, hey, come on, you know, I'm like, did you hear what I said, you know? But so more than those people that say, Lord, Lord, you know, did I not, you know, the people that think that they are going somewhere that they are not going, or, you know, falsely assuming that they made the cut and did what they needed to do or had the relationship that they thought they were supposed to have. And hearing those, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, for I never knew you. Oh, that, I just have to say it fast like that because it does, like, it punches me in the gut still. And that's something else I was going to talk about is a particular situation in the past that continues to weigh on me, and it's regarding my mother and that Bible verse and her pastor and stuff. And, it's just how dare someone be offended by that? First of all, if you have a problem with that, I don't know that you need to take it up with me. The guy that said it, maybe you want to take it up with him. Or maybe rather than that, maybe instead of getting so deeply offended by that, this is the pastor, this is my mother's pastor, saying, how dare you? Because if you are honestly sitting here, and I assume that you are questioning your mother's salvation, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, you're not only insulting her, I'm her pastor, so you're absolutely insulting me as well. And I can promise you, your mother's going to heaven. That's and I want to say I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I don't think that I am. The only reason I think maybe it didn't come across as quite that harsh is because you have to understand, when you have two people, when it's 2 against 1, there's really no need to be that nasty, because it's kind of like I know, right? This guy, whew. And it's like, do you hear yourself? Like, why would you ever, that is insane to me. The fact that someone would be, if you're that offended when little old me sits you down out of love and genuine care and concern for no reason. And that's the thing too. It's not like I was like, hey, I think you're going to go to hell. I think you're a bad person, and I have a problem with the way you're living your life, and I think that you need to get your life together or you're going to go to hell. Like, no. The fact that I had no reason for it besides it was weighing so heavily on my heart. And then I had a dream when I was a child that the rapture came, and even though in my dream as a child, like, my mother was the only one, when I woke up, it was like it was raining. And I woke up, I think, in my dream, and my mom was the only person that was gone. It was like, even back then, like, as a child, I knew that it was the rapture or something of that. Whatever it was, it stuck with me all these years, my entire life, in the back of my mind. It's not something that I thought about all the time, but like in 2020 or in 2019, it just weighed on me heavily. That out of all the people that I've ever known and that I care about, like, for some reason, the thought of Jesus looking at my mother and speaking those words to her, it hurt my heart. It really hurt my heart. And I just felt like that's what Jesus calls us to do. That is exactly what why would he say something like that? If not to say, hey, a lot of you are very greatly deceived, and a lot of the deception might be even coming from your church leaders, even your pastors, And if you're so offended by little old me having genuine concern about where you're going to spend eternity, Brother Eric, how offended are you going to be if, and I'm not saying when, but if you are so bold and have so much arrogance then as you did, if you have that amount of confidence or arrogance, I would even say, on the day that Jesus, descends with the clouds and a trumpet blast, and, you're probably going to be just the first one, just like without even hearing your name, like just, moseying onto the front of the line. And I really genuinely hope, and I don't want to sound condescending because I was going in that direction, and I'm sure you could hear that. But I'm going to dial it back very, very quickly. And I apologize and I'm sorry. And God, please forgive me for what is absolutely judgment, because that's what that was. And it came from a place of hurt. And that's not okay. With that being said, I genuinely pray that you are first in line, and as a leader of the church, and as, you know, being in a position or having the function within the body of Christ that you've had for so long, like, I hope that you are rewarded with the same measure of the responsibility that you had, and, you know, like all of that, like, and that's how it's supposed to be. I mean, I know that you have impacted my life a lot. I remember a lot of your sermons that were, I mean, to say very moving is kind of like, well, that's probably insulting. Like, I remember around that same time period, I remember going to church, like, just by myself. I mean, my mom, everybody was there, but, like, it was when I was living downtown, so I just, like, walked across the street to church. And when, at the end of the service, or at the end of the sermon, rather, you know, and they do take the offering, and they do, I guess, like an altar call type deal. I mean, it's Baptist, so the invitation, that's what they call it. And, you know, if anybody, you know, feels led to do so, like, you know, come to the altar. And I've never done that before. I've never wanted to, never felt led to, but I did. And I knelt down at that altar at the First Baptist Church in Columbia and cried. I cried so much. I'm pretty sure I had to leave. I mean, church was, you know, it was about to be over anyway, but I'm pretty sure I had to leave after that, because, like, I literally had, I snot. Like, I mean, when I cry, like, tears, obviously, but, like, I will cry, like, I cry with everything, you know, like, with every fiber in my being. And a lot of that, you know, manifests in the form of snot. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty. So, yeah, so I think I had to leave. But, I mean, it was very, it was, you know, a lot. It was just a lot of emotion. And it was real, you know. And that was, you know, in the midst of, like, a church sermon or service led by this pastor. So to say that, you know, to say that I'm, like, calling his salvation into question in any way, no, I'm not at all. But I would never want that responsibility of, and I'm pretty sure the Bible says that, you know, in situations like that, like, there's a certain level of consequence or punishment, if you will, in situations like that for your part in it, you know. So, I mean, your part in assuming wrongly, you know, in the you know, the consequence thereof. So, and, you know, when I was living for I don't even know if it was a week. I don't know how. It was probably a week at the most that I was staying in the church here in Denham Springs. It's actually right down the road from where we're living now. And that's a story. I think I told that whole story on here anyway. But, like, part of the thing was, you know, first of all, I told them that it's not going to be safe, that they're going to end up kicking me out because my crazy husband's going to cause a scene like he has everywhere else I've tried to go. And they assured me that it would be safe and there was no way that was going to happen. So, of course, the next morning after he went to jail for trying to have me murdered, they were very quick to give me a call to let me know that I would have to get my stuff out of there immediately, because they would not, you know, obviously, like, there were church members and people that were concerned and did not feel comfortable having that type of, you know, environment, like, you know, on the church property, which understandable, I guess, except, like, do you have ears to hear? And, like, really? But even in the meantime, like, even in the short period of time that I was staying there, we had multiple sit-down meetings with the pastor, my then husband, you know, my husband at the time, and And I remember a lot of people being in there. I want to say it was like the church elders maybe, but it was like several people. And there was a point when it was me on one side of the desk and all of them on the other. I mean, and it was probably 6 or 7 of them, men and women. And they wanted to discuss with me the possibility of like reconciling my marriage. And I told them that was not, no. And the pastor, was very, very adamant about, how God hates divorce and stuff. And I'm like, well, that's fine. And I understand that. However, I also am pretty sure that God hates, physical or any other type of abuse or harm being inflicted on any one of his children, which is what's being done to me. That's the reason that I'm saying that I'm here taking refuge in in the apartment in the first place. Like, you're aware of that, right? So while God hates divorce, I'm pretty sure he loves me more than he hates divorce. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't want me risking actually getting murdered this time, because that's where we're at. And I don't think that you're grasping that. And I'm sort of wondering, and so then they asked me about, my salvation. And they asked me to share my testimony, which is odd. Well, it's not really odd. It's kind of crazy because, like, I have a good testimony, especially now. Yet no one's ever asked me to share my testimony, ever. And, they did. And I'm not saying that it wasn't for pure intentions. It wasn't. I am saying that it wasn't. Because, I was like, what I mean, like, I don't know. I've never done that before, So they were like, just, basically just tell us, like, like how you met God, when you met God, what you were like before, what you were like now, like, all these things. And I don't remember exactly, but knowing me, I'm pretty sure that I was able to, Johnny on the spot, probably compose a very eloquently written or spoken, like, testimony, and just paint a very beautiful picture. I mean, it's not lies or BS. I mean, it is my testimony. But every time I would get going, they would go, hold on a second. Okay. So we're not asking you what you are. We're asking you, like, who you are, or, well, we're not asking that. We're really just asking this. And it was like, there was no, it was like the movie Forgetting Sarah Marshall, when he's like learning how to surf, and he's like, don't do anything. Like, don't do it. Well, you got to do more than that. I mean, they just were like, share your testimony. Well, no, that's not your testimony. You're just telling I'm like, I don't know what you want from me, Well, come to find out, all they wanted was for me to tell them whether or not I was actually saved, which I told them that I was. And they were like, that's fine, and that's great. And the thing is, though, and they kind of went into a very similar discussion, much like the one that I had with my mother and my pastor, not too long after that, now that I think about it. It's interesting. It kind of makes me question my motives, even though I know what my motives were. But that's how these things work, when you actually care and try to examine your heart and make sure that you do have the good, good. Make sure that your heart is in the right place, and that you're not doing things for yourself, for selfish gain or whatever. But it's very easy to allow that to overcome, or like just really, anyway. So, they pretty much told me the same thing, that a lot of people think that they're saved, but they're not, and I said, no, I know, I get that. I totally get that. But I am. And this went back and forth for I cannot tell you how long. And finally, when that pastor said, I know for sure this was the last time he said it. He said, what we're trying to say is, if you're really saved, I said, let me stop you right there. Because this whole time that you've been trying to say something, I haven't had difficulty at all telling you exactly what it is. There is no if involved. There is no if. Not if I'm really saved. I am. And if I wasn't, having my life nearly taken from me on a nightly basis and clinging to the book of Psalms or prayer or the Bible verses that I had memorized, or dropping to my knees in the closet or behind a toilet, praying to God, looking for refuge, or really just safety, fear, like whatever. I got closer to God during that period than you could even imagine. So while I do understand what you're saying about sometimes people may think that they're saved and maybe they're not, I'm telling you, not only am I saved, but God literally saved me. And I'm going to heaven without a doubt. And I feel like right now what you're really telling me, or rather the picture that you're trying to paint, correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost seems like I'm being given an ultimatum, since we can't even prove whether or not I'm a Christian or whether or not I'm saved at all. Who knows what kind of floozy you have living in your church apartment, right? Because you talked to a husband who was very heartfelt and told you how much he loved me and how much he wanted to make it work. And you want to believe that because you want to believe that, because God hates divorce. But I'm telling you that if you are at this very moment giving me an ultimatum, that if I don't reconcile my marriage with the abusive, demeaning, degrading, disrespectful husband that just got out of jail for trying to have me murdered, that I could show you all of my journal entries where I wrote down Bible verses and he scratched through them and said, God thinks you're a whore. If you're giving me that ultimatum, I think we need to talk about your salvation, Pastor. Oh, well, of course not. No, we are not. That is it. Not at all what we are doing. No. We were just, are we done here? Because I got to go. Do nothing, but I can't stay here any longer because there are so many people that will never go into a church again because of stuff like that. It probably things a lot less mild than that even. But, the problem with that situation was not any different than the situation at the school or with the therapist or the psychiatrist or marriage counselor or law enforcement or DA or family members or anybody else. The one thing that seemed to happen every time is that humans were humans. And I think part of what has made me the person that I am today and how I've been able to develop the relationship or know God the way I believe that I do now. And I'm so very grateful for that. I think it's one of the reasons that I'm able to do that is because I saw firsthand how broken and flawed and wretched people are. And I'm a person, so please don't assume that that's me casting judgment on anybody else. I mean, I am a person. So, and actually though, I will say it was a while before I stopped referring to them as humans. I mean, I felt so set apart from the entire human race. I felt so isolated and alone and abandoned and broken and just, like, I honestly have never cared about aliens or anything ever. And for some reason, after that whole experience, I just was like, you know, like, I believe in aliens, and I hope that they come back soon, and I hope they come back and get me, because they forgot me. I'm like Kevin from Home Alone. Like, they came here a long time ago, and I don't know what they did. They checked the place out or whatever, but they left, and they left me here. And like, they went, with the mom with the red hair and everything. And I thought about that since, I've thought about that recently, about how fascinating that is in light of everything that's actually like kind of unfolded since then, and like the possibility that maybe there was more to it even at the time for me, just out of nowhere, just starting to talk about otherworldly things like that. Like, I mean, but I was also losing my mind, because I had been through some trauma, a little bit. And so, yeah, the brain, the human mind is a very fascinating thing, but, like I said, like in hindsight now, thinking about how that became a topic of discussion for me at that point, in which it never really had been before. Really, it's not something I've ever been really like too intrigued by, maybe as a kid. But I thought about all this stuff since I've been really going down the rabbit hole of like these bloodlines and things with my family on both sides and everything. It's like, it kind of makes me wonder how bad my family must have really been to me growing up, for me to I don't know, because even after Max has been trying to have me hypnotized into believing that I was molested my whole childhood, because he could not accept that. It was like, and the crazy thing with the affair was like, I had given him probably 10 reasons why I did it, like, not only did I confess to everything, it's not like this has been going on for like years or anything. It doesn't make it okay. It was wrong. It was absolutely 100% wrong. And I never denied that. I admitted, I came clean. I did everything I could to make amends, to, and he wanted all these reasons, and I gave him like so many reasons. And like, as the, nightmare unfolded, it was like every so often it would be like, oh, well, here's, in light of this newly found information, it's like, well, okay, so that's probably another reason, is because, this or that, or like, it was a laundry list of reasons why I did it. And not because I was making excuses. That's the crazy thing, is like, I never made excuses, but it was like, he just could not, he had to understand why I did it. And I think the answer that he never found, and maybe he never will, is that, I don't think that it's like, I remember telling him around this time period too, I told him, I said, you know what your problem is? I said, you don't know how to take yes for an answer. And I still think that with him, he's this ball of contradiction, and he's just this, like a hurricane, like these opposing forces that are just so, just like, oh, it really is catastrophic all the time. Like, it's just, yeah, it's exhausting. But what's it called? Cognitive dissonance. Like, if cognitive dissonance was like a tropical storm brewing out in the Gulf, like, his diagnosis would be like, a category 5, like a tsunami, like a hurricane that somehow crossed over the equator and turned into like a tsunami, and I'm not being mean. I'm saying, like, it's because it's one of the reasons that it's so dangerous is that when a person cares so much and genuinely really, really believes that they're good and wants to be good, and like was so wounded. I mean, this is a fragile, very, very fragile man. Oh, are you giving them baths? Daniel? You know, I mean, he's like, he's just, I was asking, were you giving them baths?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Thank you. So you're the dad of the year. Number 1 dad, you got the card to prove it. I wasn't being sarcastic. Roscoe really. Nothing. Yeah, and I'm not really sure what I'm not sure what causes a person to be I guess some people maybe are more fragile than others. I mean, I don't know. And I'm really not being mean about that. I'm just saying, like, this is a man who, and I'm not saying that his life was great. I'm not saying that he wasn't mistreated, because he absolutely was. And it's never okay. And my heart really, you know, hurt for him because of that. But he will never get over it. I mean, his entire life is just this constant seeking out validation and justification and vindication, and like, just, it's tragic to watch, you know. But also it's like, anyway, it's just let me get back on track. Yeah, all the reasons that why I had the affair, that were just piling on top of each other, but none of them were good enough, because I think what the real reason was that he needed and wanted so badly to hear, but also would not hear and will not. He still refuses to, even if I don't know that I've ever even tried to tell him this. But it wouldn't matter if I did. The fact is, I mean, he's the reason. You know, I mean, I made the choices that I made, so I would never blame someone else. But the fact is that he, not only did he tell me when we met that the only thing that he would never be able to be okay with was infidelity. You know, he said, literally, that's the only thing that I cannot forgive. Like, I can get past anything else in this entire world except that. If you cheat on me, we're done. Okay, you know, so push me away for years and years and years. And of course, subconsciously, once, you know, I wasn't, anyway, it sounds like I'm making excuses, and I don't want to really dwell on this anyway. The fact that I was making, though, I mean, yeah, and he told me before, you know, he told me, you're going to have an affair. This is exactly how it's going to happen. And he told me play by play exactly how it was going to happen. And that is literally exactly how it happened. I mean, how do you, like, really? And almost, but anyway, so that was what he didn't want to hear, but at the same time, he wasn't going to stop until that, you know, he was never going to get the answer that he was looking for, because that's the answer, and he didn't want to hear it. But after, you know, having this therapist hypnotize me and convince me that my dad molested me my whole childhood, and then telling my dad that I was going around telling people that, so that my dad never spoke to me for like years after that. You know, like in the last, like this year, like in 2024, I'm like, holy shit, like, I just realized that, like, I was molested as a child. Like, oh my God, like, how crazy is that? Because, like, I really want to say I knew, but I didn't know, if that makes sense. And I truly feel like I had healed from it already. A part of me, honestly, this is so crazy, but a part of me really felt like God did give me, like, I felt like whatever my responsibility was, or like whatever my role was on this planet, you know, my time here, I felt like it was so huge that, you know, there were going to be things like that I was going to be able to, I was going to be able to have compassion and empathy for people and help them, you know, in the right way, not seeking out like, let me help you, let me save you, but, you know, like in a genuine, like real way, like a healthy way, be able to help people find God and heal from these traumatic experiences, you know. And I thought, that's possible. You know, I even at one point heard about like these, you know, what is it called? Like, not repressed memories, but like, when they do like your previous lives, like your, oh my gosh, what's it called? Well, but they go into like hypnotic states, and then they go, you know, they go into, anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. But you know, they kind of like previous lives, you know, and I thought, you know, it's not crazy to think that maybe I remember things that really did not ever happen to me. But then the situations that I went through as an adult that were not necessarily rape or sexual abuse or molestation, but it felt like it, you know. So I just kind of thought, you know, either way, I truly feel like I healed from whatever this unknown thing was, whether it be one event or a series of traumatic events, you know, or like something that went on for, like I said, the majority of my childhood. I felt like if I ever needed to know what it was, I would know. If God ever wanted to reveal that to me, I knew he would, and I knew that he wouldn't unless it was the right time and I was in a safe situation in which to be able to, you know, acknowledge, you know, like to face that, you know. But maybe there was no point. I didn't know. I just knew that I healed from this part of my life that was like just this mystery, and the fact that it was so deeply hidden in my subconscious really honestly scared me a little bit, because I knew it had to have been really, really, really bad for it to be that, you know, buried that deep. And I remember one time I was doing a meditation thing, like I was in the bathtub, and I don't know if it was a guided meditation or if I just heard this, but either way, like in my meditation thing, you know, I was picturing, it was like like water, and you know, you're like, it was, you know how they go into, like, it's like this whole leading up to it, but like the main point of it was, you know, to like, you're gonna look in the water, and then when you look in the water, you'll see what it is in your subconscious that you've been hiding from. You know, the reflection will be that part of you that has been, you know, that had remained hidden up until this point. And do you know that even like in that meditative state, like in the bathtub, which is crazy too, like, because I wasn't doing that on purpose, but like I was in water, like I wouldn't even bend over and look in the, I mean, I just kept saying out loud, no, I won't do it. I won't do it. My hands were shaking and stuff. I was so afraid of, you know, whatever this thing was, that I had no idea what it was. And then probably like a few days either before, like right in that same time frame, like all this stuff was like boom, boom, boom right there at the same time. You know, the guy that I was seeing like showed up in the middle of the night, and I'd been on the phone with him. Like, he was driving from New Mexico, so I had been on the phone with him for hours, like hours, and was standing in the kitchen holding a cup of coffee at like 2:00 in the morning on the phone with this guy, and heard his truck pulling onto my road, because it was like a bridge that there's an echo, and it was like really loud, and like I heard it, and I heard it on the phone as well. And I saw the headlights turn into my driveway, and I saw the headlights. So I very much knew what was going on. Something like, something happened inside of me in that moment. Like, I just went into like this other like state. Like it's like I just was transported into like another space and time, you know? And like I dropped the coffee cup and it like went everywhere in the kitchen. And I took off, like I went from the kitchen to the other side of the house, like all the way down the hall. Before he even got inside, I was like crouched down on the ground at the end of the hall, like screaming. And like, I could never even articulate how I get chills just thinking about it. I didn't recognize the voice that the scream that came out of me. It was like it was trapped inside of me. It was like if my subconscious, those memories were repressed in my subconscious mind, then the physical, you know, the emotion that was trapped in my physical body, it was like it was so deep within me that whatever caused it to be shaken loose, and I'm being serious, like, I mean, this was not an exorcism, this was not even a deliverance, there was no the power of Christ compels you. I mean, it was literally just, we're on a time frame here, you know. I mean, God's kind of like, there's a timeline. I mean, and I guess these things had to happen when they happened, and God had to get creative, I guess. Or maybe it really just is that simple as that when it's time for things to go, they gotta go, you know. And it did, and I'm telling you, I felt it leave out of me, and it felt like fear. If fear were a demonic spirit, or I mean a demon, you know, you hear about people getting possessed by, like, having demonic possession and stuff, you know, like Emily Rose, like possession of Emily Rose or whatever, you know, or like The Exorcist. It was like, I would say on a scientific, looking at it from a scientific perspective, it was trapped negative emotion from physical abuse, probably sexual, when I was very, very young. And because the memories got suppressed in my subconscious, the physical manifestation, or the negative emotion in the physical sense, was trapped inside my body for all those years. And after having a near-death experience and having like this kind of like sexual awakening, I guess, you know, I mean, kind of like finding myself in that sense, you know, like becoming a woman at 30 years old, or like 32 years old or something, having fake boobs, you know, like having a spiritual awakening, all of these things simultaneously, you know, teaching dance workout classes every day, where I'm literally going into like hypnotic trances pretty much, but like, or hypnotic states, but like really just in the best way. You know, I mean, just like working out, dancing, sweating, losing myself for hours on end, doing two of the things that I love more than anything in this world, working out and dancing, you know. Yeah, and being around people, you know, leading people. And it was like the combination of all those things it just shook this thing loose. And when it came up, it just came up and out of me. And I felt it leave. Like I heard it, like it was the craziest thing ever. And I mean, and it did, you know, I mean, like, it sounds so cliche, like I almost feel like I'm just making this up, like it was, because it did seem like something that I'd seen on a movie before, you know, like I like came to and was like, still took me a minute to be like, where am I? Like, who are you? You know, like, I was like, oh my God, like, that was insane, you know? And I've had a few experiences like that, you know? And the thing is, I guess really what I want to say, and I want to not stay on this too much longer because I have like so much stuff, but I'm also really tired and this like drains me, but it's important. And this is really for me. This at this point, like, I'm not even gonna act like, oh, well, I feel this. No, I'm like, I need to talk about this. I'm not saying I never have, but that girl was so strong, yet my heart goes out to her and hurts for her so bad all at the same time. You know, and it wasn't one of those like, oh, I was strong because I had to be. No, I didn't have to be. You know, no one has to be strong. I mean, sometimes that's the, you know, the cash in, like that's the, you know, the payout for going through anything tragic, anything traumatic in life is like, I don't have to be strong. I'm gonna be weak. I'm gonna be so weak. I'm gonna like ride this thing, you know, milk this thing for all it's worth. I'm not saying everybody does that, but people do sometimes, and I never wanted to. I never had to, but I never had to be strong either. Well, I didn't know I was strong, you know. It wasn't like, so I guess, you know, looking back on it now, like I just see me at that time as just, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite because I know I was just saying it about my ex-husband in a negative context, but like just this overwhelming contradiction in every sense. I mean, I'm teeny tiny, but just rock solid muscle, you know, like barely pushing 100 pounds. But I mean, I was just like guns, you know, and just, I'm talking like just a powerhouse of pure, just strength, you know? And you know, and of course I look back on it now, and of course I realize that becoming that strong physically was obviously, that was something that I had to do at the time because I felt so robbed of all my strength or control or, you know, everything else. Like, you know, I just felt so helpless and powerless in every other aspect. So I mean, of course, you know, it makes sense that I would, you know, make it a point to be as strong as I could physically, but it was good for me, you know. And I think that, I hope that every woman at least once in their life, for a decent reason at least. I mean, I think anytime when it comes to things like working out, going to the gym, like having like a, you know, like anything like that, I mean, it's just, I don't think it's something that anyone naturally just loves in like a completely intrinsically motivated, like, a set, like totally apart from ego, just healthy, balanced, just, it's good for my emotional well-being, and it's good for my, you know, for me physically. So like doctor says no, like I just don't know that anybody has that level of commitment, any level of commitment to when it comes to things like diet and nutrition. It just, because it's such a physical thing, you know, it's so physical. So it's almost like you really have to have something motivating you that is also very much on a physical level, you know. Like for me, like I said, like, you know, it started off as like a, you know, a way to kind of counteract my, you know, like negative body image or issues, or, you know, but then also like, yeah, like in a vain way, you know what I mean? Like I wanted to look good, and be in shape. And then And then when I started doing when I trained for like the bodybuilding competition, it was like, it was more of like I guess it was more mental at that point, but it was like I want to see how far I can push myself physically. Not for like an extended period of time, but like just for a brief period, I want to push myself to my limits and see really what that's like, just to say that I did it. And I did. And I'm glad that I did. But like I said, it wasn't to think that people maintain that level of dedication to that. I mean, it's not healthy. And I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying that, there are some things like growing in my faith, growing in a relationship with God, or even hobbies like painting and stuff, I really feel like those are things that are, I feel like it's a lot more feasible to get, have that be, to be like super passionate about it and really just immerse yourself in it, or be consumed by it. And it really be because just for love of the art or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be, well, I'm just trying to prove to somebody or be better than somebody or, anything like that. Like, I think it can be on a very, not superficial level. So, yeah, I don't know that has anything to do with anything, but for what it's worth, I find it very, in my opinion, I feel like it would be nearly impossible for a person to maintain a long-term commitment to health, fitness, diet, nutrition, all that, to really have it be like, just to have like to maintain that long-term in a serious way, and it not be because they have some deeper, I feel like it's going to stem from something deeper. And usually is directly linked to like our physical bodies in some way. So anyway, I guess I'm gonna take a break on that point. I haven't really gotten into any of the things that I wanted to, but it's hard. It's so draining. It's so draining. And it's crazy in this very moment, I'm realizing this is okay. So to speak on something that is laid dormant in the farthest reaches, like in the all the corners of my mind, it's like, if speaking on any of those things drains me this much, I mean, you got to ask yourself, like, what's it been doing this whole time? How much cancer is just eating us alive from the inside out, just festering in every corner of our physical bodies and our emotional bodies and our minds and our subconscious minds and our, just our DNA, our blood, just everything, every single fiber of our existence. The fact that we are maintaining as well as any of us are is, I want to say, a miracle in itself, I mean, really. Like, I'm talking about these things I'm speaking on things that are actually distracting myself from, it really is just like me avoiding the actual topics that I've been, that have been laid on my heart to talk about. So this is like the opening act that's just kind of filling in until the headliner gets here, and I'm so drained right now. I'm just like, bleh. And if speaking on these things, which I'm not saying if, it absolutely promotes, or, it initiates the healing process. It definitely sparks that flame, and it's very important and very healing and very, important. But if just speaking on these things drains me this much, I just can't imagine what it's like going through life carrying all this inside, which we all do. Maybe not to the same degree, maybe not all the same things, maybe not whatever, but we have to stop. And we have to stop carrying around other people's burdens, because that's not fair and that's not okay either. And that is, I'm telling you right now, I feel a heaviness on me that is like, it is literally, I feel like if I were to try to walk across the room right now, it would be like walking through a room full of peanut butter. That's how weighed down and heavy this feeling is. And that is another thing that these, I've heard like several of these prophetic speakers saying, like in the last 2 days, I want to say it was probably like 3 different ones said that there is absolutely, they're seeing they're seeing the, there's been introduced a spirit of, it's really just like this heaviness that I was describing. That's what it is. And to hear that many people speak on the same thing in a 24-hour period, and to feel this now, and that's the crazy thing, is like, it's just one of the Godzillion, as my daughter used to call it, Godzillion. It's one of the infinite number of reasons why God is so amazing, because, and why it really, it's like I forget how easy it is to trust in Him. I forget how easy it is to hold on to faith in anything that involves Him. In any situation of any level of uncertainty or doubt or fear, or, it's like, you really don't even have to question it. If His hand's in it, which it should be, in everything, there's nothing, literally nothing, He can't and won't use for your good. Every time. Every time. Why do we worry? Like, why? Like I just said, like I really just said, I had 3 different, people that I really hold in high esteem on that scale. I don't know them personally, but speak on the same heavy spirit that is clearly demonic, that has been introduced into our atmosphere, I believe was the exact words one of them used, for them to all 3 speak on that in the last 24 hours, and to be that specific about it, and how it's demonic, and there's, absolutely going to be an increase in wickedness and all these things. But here I am feeling that, fully witnessing, experiencing that heaviness of that spirit that I know is the same one they were referring to, but it just so happens to be in the process of unpacking and making sense of, and acknowledging and letting go of all this trauma and all these things that have been kept hidden, and all this shame that was tried to be forced on me, and just all those things. That, isn't it wild that just me putting that out there or letting it go, or all of that. it kind of makes you wonder how much of it is, it doesn't matter if it's God. It doesn't matter if God's behind it 100%. If he's the one that, sent down the order and signed off on it, or if it was in any way related to the schemes of the devil, but like God so often does, he saw an opportunity to, switch his thing, like flip the script, in order for it to play out the way it needed to, for his, will to be carried out. He does that all the time. I mean, he'll use it's not good or bad to him. It's not like God promotes sin. God's it's not that, but it's like he can and will use anything, because it's just all getting to the it's all done. To him, it's all done. It's like, we're just so limited in our ability to comprehend. We're just so far beneath his capacity to understand. And it's like, what do we think he does? Like, what do we think when we pray for God? Like, God, please answer this prayer for me. That, if God sees a scenario and knows that he can allow it to play out in a certain way to where this person does this and all these things happen just so, and it gets you to the end result that that is his will, and in response to your answering your prayer. But like, let's say one of the people that are involved in this whole scenario is an unbeliever. Like, the way our very limited, or like our very small in comparison brain capacity, like we think of it like, well, no, I mean, he couldn't use that person. That person's not even a believer, he wouldn't use. But I mean, God's like, well, that's crazy, because actually, spoiler alert, after this whole ordeal plays out, he ends up giving his life to me. So why would I not use an unbeliever? So I can't use the props that I created on the stage for the scene that I'm trying to direct? Is that what you're saying? You're saying because when I went to, like when we took 5 and the enemy snuck in and messed around with all the props and like, changed out, like kind of altered the costumes and like just kind of put his hand in on everything, therefore like tainting all of the props that we were going to use on stage and stuff. Are you saying now like I can't use them because even though I'm God and I created them for the play, for my script, it's like, who do you think it created him in the first place? Don't you know that he's actually one of the characters in my movie? It's like God's like just kind of laughing about it, But it's not wrong for us to think that way, because we want to please him. So we're like, oh no, if it's bad, we don't, we want to see things good and bad because we want to be good for him, I guess. I mean, I do. I just can't wait to meet him. I think I just can't wait to meet him. And I know that it's going to be one of those things where that's something you waited your whole life for, but at the same time, it's like, oh, hey, just kind of like, I've been waiting my whole life to be face to face with you, to meet you. And yet, when I look at you, I realize I've known you my whole life. I'm so tired. Anyway.